I'm a marriage and family therapist, everyone. My ex held it over my head of how embarrassing is it going to be if you leave and you're a couples therapist. And it was a hit to my own ego of like, how could this fail? Like, how did I get here? But there's a lot about domestic violence we don't know. A general definition here is that domestic violence is a pattern of control and abusive behaviors used by one person to dominate another within a relationship. So it's not the typical black eye physical violence. It can happen, but a majority of the time, abuse, I would say, is often undetected. It's a pattern of multiple different events of psychological abuse, control, neglect, intimidation, stalking, financial abuse, even sexual assault, coercion, threats, isolation, surveillance. I would say around probably 95 to 98% of domestic violence cases honestly never have physical harm or assault.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow, and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life and marriage? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. Okay, so normally my episodes are all very much about how to have a healthy relationship in your marriage, how to have healthy partnership and all of that. And if you're a loyal listener, you may have noticed that in several episodes I've mentioned this does not apply to you if you're in a toxic relationship. And I figured it's about damn time where we actually define what that means. So I want to offer you a trigger warning. This episode will be covering domestic violence. Nothing graphic or anything like that, but this will be informative about what signs to look for. So if you're not in a place where listening to this offers you anything good to you in the moment, feel free to not listen to a different episode, or maybe save this for later for when you are in a position to listen to this. My hope for you is that you'll kind of like do a check on your own relationship, or if you know someone that sounds like they have something like this, that you have more in your toolkit to support them going forward. Okay. So just wanted to put that out there because I care about you and I want to make sure that you're getting the most out of this episode if you're in the place to listen to this episode. Now, with that said, I'm very excited to have my new friend, Brooke, LaLone, here to talk about domestic violence. This is not an area of specialty for me, and I want to make sure that you're hearing the right stuff from the right people. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's got a lot to share. And I've got a lot to learn from listening to this. So Brooke, thank you so much for being here. I know this is a heavy topic, but it's such an essential one because all we want for everyone, ourselves included, is to be in a safe, loving relationship with ourselves and with others. So before we get started, can you please share with everyone who's new to you, where you live, how old your kids are, and what led you to become a therapist and also specialize in DV?
Well, firstly, thank you so much, Michelle. It's an honor to be here. I'm really excited to share this since I believe, even though it's a heavy topic, it's really needed, I think, for everyone to know, not just for maybe themselves. I hope you're in a safe relationship, but unfortunately, with just the world as it is and the systems we're under, there's a lot of these dynamics that play out, not just in romantic relationships. And I think we're often uneducated to the red flags for a reason. But I live currently right now in Rochester, New York. I have one child. I have a daughter who's going to be 4 in March, and she's an absolute spitfire, a run for my money. She's fierce. Like, she's my everything. And I became a marriage and family therapist. Well, I started graduate school back in 2017 here. It was right after the classic story of I met a boy, he swept me off my feet, fell in love in college, and quickly moved into a committed relationship. And moved in together. I actually was planning on, after graduating undergrad, moving to Boston, going to University of Massachusetts, and attending their graduate program there. But lo and behold, because we live in a culture of the fairy tales and Nicholas Sparks, I thought I found the one, and ended up just going to the program here, which is off with, it's highly ranked, University of Rochester. But I'm really glad I ended up in this program as a marriage and family therapist, since it offered me training to understand not just marriage and family therapy. We also call ourselves systems therapists, and learning about how everything operates in systems, rather from the top down of our society, government, all the way to our individual relationships and families, school system, healthcare system, all of that. But honestly, I was really pulled to go into psychology, mental health from an early age, just being a highly sensitive child, curious. I grew up around, now I realize, a lot of abuse and trauma. Couldn't name it back then or realize what it was. But I think it was just me trying to figure out what was going on, and I just loved, people. So it felt like a really good fit. Still is. And then graduated in right before COVID in 2020, so 2019, and worked in a few different settings of an eating disorder hospitalization clinic, private practice, and now I own my own private practice, and also work online as a systems strategist and coach, helping others, deconstruct from different systems of abuse, whether it is a romantic relationship, a family system, or even a work environment.
That's amazing. I say this all the time, and whether it is abuse or patterns or whatever, we normalize what we grow up seeing because that is our normal. And we think that it's okay because that's our baseline. Only once we are exposed to other things, we're like, wait a minute, wait a minute. Yeah. I don't know that I like that. That's why I am the way I am.
Yep.
So in some way, I think we all have grown up with some level of, I'll call it little t trauma that has really impacted how we look at life, how we interact with life. So before we dive into this topic, because I know a lot of people who hear domestic violence are like, that's not me, because he doesn't hit me. He's never laid a hand on me. I want to just say that is one form of domestic violence. So can you define the different types of domestic violence that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will even preface before I begin, I say this lightheartedly, and I've done a lot of work myself around this, but I'm just laughing at people, at myself, for people to be like, I'm a marriage and family therapist, everyone. Because honestly, my ex held it over my head. A piece of the domestic violence we'll talk about was how embarrassing is it going to be if you leave and you're a couples therapist? And it was a hit to my own ego of how could this fail? How did I get here? But again, there's a lot about domestic violence we don't know. A general definition here is that domestic violence is a pattern of coercive control and abusive behaviors used by one person to dominate another within a relationship. So it's not the typical, right, black eye physical violence that we're thinking about. It can happen, but a majority of the time, abuse, I would say, is often, we'll just call it silent, undetected. And it's a pattern of multiple different events of psychological abuse, control, neglect, intimidation, stalking, financial abuse, even sexual assault, coercion, threats, isolation, surveillance, are just many of the broad themes that we can see with domestic violence.
So all of that has a very negative impact to your mental health. Oh, yeah. I always knew that it existed, obviously, But I didn't really see it like until I helped a friend get out of a marriage because she was experiencing domestic violence.
Yeah.
And it was emotional abuse as well as financial abuse and physical abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And that was very eye-opening to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know she's not alone.
No.
Is there like a percentage of like a statistic out there?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, this is so broad, not studied enough. And I think there's the problem here. And my hope for this episode is that to open eyes that not many people realize they're in abusive relationships because there's no black eye, there's no harm that we can put a finger on. But I believe, I would say around probably 95 to 98% of domestic violence cases honestly never have physical harm or assault. And when I use this broad term of coercive control, which I listed out a bunch of different, it's a big umbrella term, but control, it's a power and control dynamic at play. And coercive control, though, is these tactics are equal to psychological warfare that are used on war prisoners, where it can get to this place of absolutely, not just mental instability, but that piece of it for your mental health. You feel like you're in a different reality. You are going crazy. I hate using the term crazy, but just my lived experience, my whole sense of self, identity, life felt so destabilized by the end and escaping. I couldn't recognize myself from 2 years ago trying to escape. So it is devastating.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously share what you're comfortable with, but could you share what were like the red flags and warning signs that you, looking back, now realize that you missed?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, like add in any of the other common things that women out there should be kind of on the lookout for.
Yeah. I will say in the beginning of all relationships, it tends to be a very quick, like, honeymoon period. Some people will use the term love bombing is the first red flag. A person that swoops right in, or constantly talking, having a good time, going on dates, the big bouquet of flowers, or some, we're going to go to a big trip to Paris or wherever. That kind of happened with me in college. It was a big red flag too is that there were some rumors that he was cheating on a girlfriend of 3 years, 2-3 years prior to me. I was new to the college I went to, so I was only there for a full year, so I was a complete outsider. So I didn't know. I didn't have supports to kind of verify, really, is this true? Is he a good guy? But by the time we were to graduate, it was a quick, like I said, instead of going to Boston in Massachusetts, I went and moved right in with him because he was like, you're my one, my soulmate. I can't do long distance. I didn't want to do long distance. And a big thing for me, you're often blind to these red flags. I think partially due to possibly upbringing, my own trauma and attachment wounds, wanting to be loved. It felt amazing, right? And then also, again, our culture of Nicholas Sparks, sweep you off your feet, Prince Charming, because he checked all the boxes. It's really hard because often abusive people are incredibly manipulative and can wear a bunch of different masks, and they know what they're doing. So they're not going to show red flags often either. But I think just knowing what's healthy versus not, going slow in dating and having autonomy, respecting boundaries is all huge. But growing up in an environment that didn't give me those skills or awareness or self-worth, I was the perfect, I think, victim for this. And I think a lot of women in our culture, unfortunately, are primed to not detect it right away.
Yeah, especially when you don't grow up with, like, unfortunately, however your father treated your mother and vice versa really dictates what you look for in your future partner, right? Yeah. Unless you luckily come across someone who came from a healthy relational background and they treated you right. It does seem kind of like luck sometimes, right? Like timing and luck and your readiness and receptivity to accept that.
Yep.
And sadly, because like while psychology is not something new, emotional awareness, emotional intelligence is relatively new in our society, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And because of that, because women tend to be more emotionally aware, I'll say, and men are not, because that's not something that was particularly emphasized or encouraged with our generation. Thankfully, that's changing, because I look at my 16-year-old, I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
The way you care for your girlfriend, I'm like, wow.
Oh.
You know, he talks about her period, he talks about her cycle, her emotions. I'm like, what on earth? This is incredible. You know, so it's like, how refreshing, but also it makes so much sense for what women of our generation, when I say generation, I'm a millennial, right?
Yep.
So millennial and prior, we've gone through some things with our romantic relationships, because we're kind of out there like, someone love me, but not really understanding what that means.
Yeah.
So I'd love to kind of dive into what the opposite of that looks like. And what I mean by that is emotional safety.
Yeah.
Right. So we talked about the red flags. Now I want to talk about the green flags.
Yes.
What are the green flags of relationships? So people could be like, okay, this is what I'm working towards. Not just like, what should I avoid, but what do I want to look out for? What are the actual check boxes that matter versus what we were spoon fed, which was like the fairy tale bullshit, right? Like, oh, does he open your door for you? Does he pay for your dinner? Like, at the end of the day, that says nothing about their character. They just know prescribed ways to win your heart, which don't actually matter in the long run.
Absolutely. So I'll start this off with a little bit of a trauma-informed take as well, or attachment theory, which this could be a whole other episode in and of itself, so I won't spend too much time. But I will just say I find it funny because I do joke with this other guy at the same time that, you know, kind of talking, dating phase, that he's the walking green flag that I probably should have picked versus my ex. But at the time I talked to people about, it can be really tricky too, because we can honestly look at things on paper for what's, you know, what's checking the boxes of what I value, what I like, what's green flags. But our nervous system from our upbringing too, even if we know, right? Like I knew I want nothing like my parents' marriage, because that was toxic. But, you know, again, meeting abusive, controlling people, again, are very masked. In my nervous system at my core, as I was talking to this other gentleman, incredibly intelligent, successful, all the green flags. But it was like my nervous system was like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it, you know, and I couldn't put words to it back then. Why? It was like, why am I not interested? I'm like, it's repelling because he was safe, and my nervous system didn't know safe, and our nervous system will align to what feels safe. Because with my ex, I didn't, again, know this at the time, the butterflies we feel often are the warning signs in our nervous system being like, oh, this feels like home. This feels like home. That does not, like, usually that's a red flag unless we really do the work. And it's normal to, right, probably be nervous and be excited and be a little giddy, but not. For me, it begins what's called a trauma bond, a chemical addiction to this person. So when you're in that place and maybe you haven't done therapy, done the work, or even different types of trauma or somatic therapies, it all gets very confusing. So like I said, that could be a whole other podcast episode, or, right, like 6 months to a year, 2 years of therapy for some people to unpack all of that. So that can be complex, but I think the green flags would say, like, a person that it sounds very basic, but we weren't taught this. And I'm seeing them, my daughter in her preschool is actually getting taught basic language around emotions. For one, when you state a feeling or an opinion, a person can hear it. They don't get defensive. They don't shoot it down. They don't blame you, mock you. Obviously, too, respecting boundaries, respecting your autonomy, being able to sit down and have hard conversations without running away, again, deflecting, blaming, not, if you have an emotional response like crying, or you're worried, a partner that doesn't dismiss it. That's a very big common one I see, I would say, unfortunately, in our culture with men, because they're taught that emotions aren't safe. That's a feminine thing. Get incredibly uncomfortable with feelings. So I know that alone isn't, domestic violence in and of itself. There's a lot of work that men can do, and I welcome them to. This is not to shame any man either. Because domestic violence can be flip-flopped, but it is predominantly gender-based here too. So I always tell people I'm not, here to be totally like awful and crap on men. I love men. There's good men out there and want more safe men. So I think emotional safety too, it's like I tell people checking in with your body when you're with a person. Do you feel on edge? Do you feel tense? Do you feel anxious? Because throughout my entire relationship with my ex, looking back, I didn't feel safe. I was constantly anxious. I just thought it was just me. I'm anxiously wired. I have ADHD. I'm stressed. But it was my body. My body was telling me all the red flags and warning signs before I could cognitively pick up on anything.
Absolutely. And so much of what I've been learning since my, let's say, mid-30s about nervous system regulation, I'm like, why were we not taught this earlier? That our bodies carry so much wisdom. Like this is information that I'm sure that ancient populations had. They practiced this kind of wisdom. And then it got marked as witchcraft probably, right? But honestly, your body is so wise, and we have not been taught to listen to it. And now that you are hearing this, I want you to start kind of walking around through life, paying attention to how you feel around certain people, right? Like if you start to feel anxious around someone, maybe ask yourself why, right? And I'm glad that you shared the difference that just because you or your partner may not practice emotional safety with each other, that does not necessarily equate to domestic violence, okay? It could simply be they were never taught, you were never taught. Like, because if we just use that as a definition, then I was emotionally abusive. But really, I just didn't learn great communication skills. I didn't learn how to be emotionally safe for other people. And so I think the biggest difference, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brooke, is the willingness to grow, right? The willingness to be like, oh, this is not working, and doing the hard work of looking at ourselves and looking at the things that we're doing and realizing, damn, I don't like that I do that. So like, I want to create emotional safety. I don't want to make whoever feel like they can't tell me things. I don't want to get defensive. I don't want to blame. That's just a coping mechanism that I've learned because of what my parents taught me, because what their parents taught them. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in an abusive relationship. I'm going to let you add more to that because, again, this is not my specialty.
No, you're good. No, but you're 1,000% spot on. I think the commitment to be nonviolent, be safe, be accountable, being able to take accountability, forgive, apologize genuinely is paramount. Because in my mind, too, again, I think it's the brainwashing of Disney and our culture and what I just longed for, especially after marriage. For me, I always thought it's us two. We're a partnership, right? Equally in all domains. And that's not whatsoever in my ex's mind. And he could even tell me about it, I think, even with a straight face, and we weren't like fighting or having like a difficult conversation. But towards the end, he was very open about, I just saw marriage as what I had to do, and you're like my property. And it's pretty dark to have a person say that, and a person with that mindset doesn't see you as equal, and we're not going to do the work just naturally within and of itself. So it's looking at values too, of like, do our values line up? as well, before even, getting into long-term commitment. But the person that can sit with you, and I guess like a good gauge is, who do you want with you at your darkest moments in a hospital, giving birth, postpartum, a loss of a parent, loss of a job, is a really good indicator to ask yourself, is this person emotionally safe in those instances too?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to be in a relationship that's all fun and light,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that's not life. I'm hoping that we all have more of those moments than any other moments, but how you described how we should choose partners is spot on. Like, you're choosing someone to do life with, to handle the darker moments
Mm-hmm.
with. Like, that's when it counts
Mm-hmm.
the most,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who got divorced. I don't even know how long it's been now, because not because he isn't a great person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, on paper, he's amazing and
Mm-hmm.
he's a great friend and all of that. But when her mom passed away, he did not know how to be there for her.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't meet her where she needed to be met. And the lack of emotional intimacy and intelligence and awareness and all of that, like, she realized that their values, where they placed what they prioritized, were not aligned.
Yeah.
And whether you're married or you're about to get married or you're single, these are all really important questions to
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, because you need the right person by your side
Mm-hmm.
when it comes down to those events in life that we're all bound to experience in some way or the other, right? You're going to deal with the death of a loved one. You're going to deal with some kind of tragedy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you don't want to have to experience that on top of feeling like you're not safe in your own home.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that DV is very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it takes several times for someone to successfully leave their situation, because fear of the unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also comfortable with the familiarity.
Right.
So, what are some challenges to leaving an abusive situation?
Mm-hmm. As you're saying that, I want to be like everything, but I can break it down much more than that. But yeah, it starts with, I think, like, just in our world, the systems aren't set up for single parents, especially single mothers. I think even if you were to leave a relationship amicably, you need that support, or just a single person nowadays, and the economy is hard. So I just think that fear of, how will I sustain myself? The biggest piece, personally, the first step trying to leave is, I mentioned earlier, a trauma bond, and that is an emotional, literally an addiction that operates honestly similarly to heroin in our brain and body, where it's a physical, painful withdrawal, that the only thing that feels like can regulate you is the person that just harmed you. And it sounds very messed up from the outside, where, I've had women come into my office with a black eye, and my own anxiety is like, you need to leave. Like, you could die. But it's, you get so controlled to that point that your body physically feels, yeah, I can't survive. And that takes a lot of effort and detox to do that. And you need a lot of support. And if you're privileged enough to have the money to go to therapy, to go to the doctor, because often this is linked to a ton of physical health problems, fibromyalgia, POTS, you name it. And then, do you have a supportive family, supportive friends? Because again, in the culture, I think there's a big barrier between the shame and stigma with women, even other women, right? Because they'll be like, well, on paper, he's the great guy. On Facebook, I was actually jealous of your maternity photos he took of you. He seemed like the perfect husband. So you just second guess everything. And I lost a ton of friends because he was my world. I was forced to make him my world. So there was a lot of relationships I did lose. And, that's a whole process of itself. And then to try to escape an abusive person, especially if you have a child, going to court, that's another tool of control for that person, in divorce. And then the barriers of finances. How am I going to upfront thousands, like could go into six digits for an attorney to escape. When I've maybe had the financial abuse, or your stay-at-home mom with no money at all. So it's just this on and on and on. How will I sustain work then? Or if I don't have an education, and now I'm a single parent, like how do I, it's just the entire system. It feels so loaded against you, just even trying to break that trauma bond. And then, the risk for homicide skyrockets. Once you say, it's done, I'm over it, we need a divorce, and also then try to leave, just that reality of it. So I understand why women stay in the familiarity, because that feels like climbing 17 Mount Everest.
Yeah, and if you get really well versed with what path to walk, like how you can walk on those eggshells around them, that does seem less intimidating than the unknown. Like the question of like, how will I make enough money? Where will I live? Especially if you don't have that level of support from people. And I almost feel like this next thing is a necessary thing to talk about, the cycle. Can we talk about how that works?
Yes. Yep. And this ties into that trauma bond. And also you in the cycle, you as the victim, it keeps you second guessing in a fog, because there's a lot of abusive relationships that look great and all genuinely feel great, or there's the cycle of initially to rape, the honeymoon phase, the fun, and then it goes to like this build up intention, or you do something, and it could be something really small, and no one should ever be punished, I think, for anything, but you get into a fight or anything, and there is then a punishment following the abuse. And that could even be them giving you the silent treatment for 2 days. It doesn't have to be, right? Like, again, even verbally abusive, violent. But then we slowly kind of get back to normal, and then this honeymoon phase happens again, over and over and over. And there's never a makeup or an apology. I could never talk to my ex and sit down and be like, let's work through this. Let's talk about that. Let's budget. Because anytime I did try to bring up accountability over time, that's when the physical violence started to happen. But when you're in the honeymoon phase and things feel good, and this could be weeks or months, and then one thing happens. But the cycle just kind of keeps spiraling and spiraling. And over time, though, the honeymoon phase never gets back up to the initial feelings of the dating and the fun and getting swept off your feet. But that trains your brain to like crave this. And so when they've given you the silent treatment for 3 or 4 days, and then finally they give you a hug, that feels like Disney World to your brain and body. Like, this is normal. Okay, we're back. And then we just keep repeating. And that's how they keep you trained to stay.
So how do women help themselves break out of that cycle successfully? If it does kind of seem like it's like a chemical imbalance that gets created because of the repetition.
Yeah. It's an excellent question. And that's something I'm pondering myself, because as a therapist, and in the domestic violence, because the psychological abuse and gaslighting was so bad, but I blame myself for everything, because if I had any emotions, cried or anything, that would trigger my ex. So I went to therapy, and I did need therapy to unpack my childhood for sure. So I did a lot of trauma therapy, EMDR, and also at the same time a talk therapist. And as I was bringing stuff up over time, both therapists were both like, I could see when I talked to them, their eyes would get really big and they'd be like, this is abuse, you gotta leave. And I won't be so flippant. I have gratitude for both of them. They did help me. But I know as a therapist myself, you're so limited in what you can really do. So they just give you the domestic violence hotline number, the local shelter, and say they'll help you. And I think it's our anxiety, because we're not trained in this. As a therapist, myself in graduate school, there's probably like an hour and a half training. I recall a tiny bit about control, but it kind of was the same general gist of like, if a woman's getting abused, I'm going to know it. She's going to walk in my office. She's going to have a bruise. She's going to talk about it. She punched a hole in the wall. It's going to be very apparent. So just my own ignorance there as a therapist, I'm guilty of it. I've been there before with clients and wishing I could do more. But then being in it, I just I felt so stuck because I even called home multiple times to my parents when my ex was honestly homicidal, suicidal, and they did nothing. So that's another layer of the gaslighting of what is going on. Like, no one's helping to step in that can or will. Even his own parents, they knew about it. They witnessed the abuse. Nothing. And I just felt so lost and stupid, honestly, because it's like, what is going on? And honestly was getting blamed. Well, what did you do to cause him to get so angry? So you're already up against all of that. But, fortunately for me, part of it, I think, is luck of the draw. I already knew, fortunately for graduate school, I think graduate school and becoming a therapist really helped to save me and pull myself out of this, because I don't think I'd even be aware of it now if I picked any other career route, honestly. But in graduate school, they had us go to the local court, city hall, for a whole day and just sit in all these different court appearances that were open to the public, know the building, see what people have to go and do if we were going to support them. And I remember I sat in the domestic violence court for probably a couple hours that day, and it just really was eye-opening. And I think Rochester's a fairly large city compared to the tiny town I grew up in. So I think just in and of itself, if I never had that experience or knew where to go and park in the parking garage, what floor to go, get through security, I probably wouldn't have gone by myself to get my order of protection almost 2 years ago, come February. And I think then luck of the draw of having a very, very kind and well-versed and educated DV advocate to help me write my petition then. Because if I did that alone, I think in that point, and also being postpartum with the hormones and the fog and just your body going through all of that trauma in and of itself, I don't think I could have written a petition that was coherent to the judge, because I blame myself for a lot of the things that were going on. And that was the first experience for me to have someone really validate what was going on. And I just remember the DV advocate, her eyes were about to like bulge out of her head with some of the stuff I was saying, but it was the first moments of it really being validated to me how bad it was, and understanding the actual legal and potential criminal charges that I was like, I had no idea that these things were this bad. And having a judge then say, this is one of the worst I've ever seen, and sheriffs and officers telling me all the same things. But I think like it's this really weird place to be in that doesn't make it ever easy for a person to do this alone. And that's why I've stepped out of my therapist role and creating more of an online space community one for people. I think women, in an ideal world, we need like a bunch of women to help us, mothers, grandmothers, like just that whole kind of matriarch setting ideal to truly support us with childcare, just emotional support. Men are welcome too here, but I'm just saying, I just think like we need that nurturance, that emotional safety across the board, and access to these systems and financial care and support. And I know in a perfect world, I wish I could give everyone trying to leave like $2,000 cash on hand to help with an attorney retainer fee or an apartment or car, whatever you need it for, because that's, and again, another barrier. So if you have financial resources, that's great, or family that can support, or access to a loan, that's a suggestion. But I think we need community and, unfortunately, in capitalism, financial access so that people can leave, and systems that are genuinely trained to pick up on it.
I mean, there's lots of things that could be different about how life works here as a woman in particular. And I'm so grateful that you are an available resource for people. For those who are kind of on the edge, they're like, I know mentally I need to leave, and it's very challenging. What tips or insight or light bulb moments can you share that get to happen when they actually leave?
It's going to sound a lot of these cliche and cheesy and corny, because I get it, on the edge. You're wrestling with a lot of feelings and fear, rightfully so. But on the other side of it, you see how strong you are. these can be double-edged swords, right? I never wish anyone to go through what I have, but what you're capable of, you get to, at least in my part, having a child, and unfortunately, there is the fear and the reality that most court systems will give you 50-50 custody with your child and the abuser. It's, again, the society we live in, but that she's been safe, fortunately, from what I know. But when I get to be fully present for her when she's with me, even as hard as it is, still have to work and all that stuff, but I get to be present with her and not worry about the fear in my own home if the dishes aren't done or his needs aren't met. And then I have been able to find myself. In my entire life, I didn't know myself, right? And that's why I ended up in that relationship, because I felt my worth was tied to this timeline of finding the right person, getting married, having kids, which I still value all of those things and want those things for my future. But it allowed me to figure out, like, what do I even want to do? And like a lot of growth. And for me, it's extending my business and shifting it from therapy and being able to meet a ton of people online. And I know it's really, really scary to have to be vulnerable. But it's allowed me to form really, really beautiful and fulfilling connections in this kind of community and online space, other survivors, other mentors. So there's those positives. I know in the moment it feels awful. This is your worst nightmare. But kind of everything will feel like it's crumbling. You'll lose a lot, but I think it gives you a whole different perspective on life and gratitude for what you do have.
Well, thank you so much. For those who need you or know someone that needs you, where is the best place to connect with you?
Yeah. So social media, Reclaim with Brooke is one of them. I have two. I have my other one that was originally a personal account, but Brooke.LaLone. Either work. I have a link in my bio there to access to different services, but also I have an email, reclaimingmehealing@gmail.com. If you want to really directly reach out, that's probably the easiest, but if you want to check out my stuff and services, my link is right there. I do offer a free community, also have like a membership where I do value financial access. I want to help survivors, and I have a community for financial feasibility of like one-on-one sessions. I do offer for more personalized support, but an online community membership that's hopefully more financially accessible to meet with me and other women for just some empowerment sessions via Zoom, and premium content there and courses to help, understand your nervous system, the trauma bonds, all of this type of stuff that I'm offering, since, again, I'm trying to create something that I didn't have, but what I needed. And it's ever growing as I just try to navigate it myself, because when you escape abuse, it's not over. There's it's always looming. I always have to interact with my ex every single day to co-parent. So it's an ever evolving process for myself, and I think everyone I will meet with.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing some insight and all that information to help people be on the lookout. It's the club that no one wants to be a part of, but at least you know that if you are, there are people out there who can help you navigate the very complicated situation that you're in, people who can hold you because they've been there. And I hope that if you do realize that you're in the situation, that you reach out to Brooke or someone else that that can support you through this, or if you know someone else.
Yep.
I know that's a little bit sensitive. Do you have any tips on how to help people who maybe are afraid to admit that they're in this kind of situation?
Yeah. I guess just I'm thinking back to, if I could tell my past self, because all of the shame, guilt, fear, I think online was the biggest place for me to find other creators that were open about their journeys, as shameful as it felt for me, being like, I would never admit any of this. And here I am being very open online, because I don't want anyone else to feel the shame I felt or be like, it's only me, like I'm an awful person, right? But I think reaching out, I do offer one-on-one sessions for free, the first consult, at least, to meet with you and help you get an idea of where to start. Just start somewhere. Whether it is not, doesn't even have to be myself, but one or two people where I had one trusted friend I sent texts to, even being like, hey, it's not good. And that was for a couple of years, even, because it takes anywhere from 7 to 12 times or more for people to fully, finally leave. And if you are spiraling and second guessing it, that's normal. So just normalizing it, that this is a lot, and we don't, because we're not aware of it, we downplay it in our heads, and people around us might. But if, you have to know what's best for you and also your children. And, there are hotlines you can Google, the national hotline, local ones, shelters locally. So there are resources, and social media is a great place to at least start to get that sense of community.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I just want to make sure that people don't shy away from offering that support. Yeah. Because they don't want to offend their friend or loved one if they recognize that they're in that situation. So we definitely want to equip people with that. Okay, so...
And I should add, I apologize too, if you believe that, right, like a loved one is in this place, my recommendation is just to gently, I kind of use the metaphor of just planting the seed of like, hey, I recommend probably not even texting it because of online surveillance and stalking that can be happening to your loved one's phone, right? Like the iCloud and all of that. So if you kind of outwardly say it, we don't know who might have access to it. But I think if you can in person say like, I'm here, I love you, I'm concerned, they most likely will deny it, push away from it, downplay it because of all the factors I've listed. But I think you've at least identified you're a safe person. And it might be years down the road where they finally come to you, but you've opened the door and, try to manage your own anxiety. I know. Oh my gosh, you have to leave, which I know that's so easy to do. I have to do that every single day myself, listening to client stories, but just trying to stay regulated and just say like, I'm here. And that's all for right now. And then if things have to obviously escalate and you need to tangibly help them, I hope there's other resources here for some steps to, driving them to the courthouse, helping them with childcare, helping them with legal research, holding money for them, and, cash to leave, important documents, things like that.
That's very helpful to know. Because I think oftentimes people might feel helpless. Like, I want to help you get yourself out of that situation so bad. But like we uncovered in this episode, it comes with a lot of complications and challenges when it comes to actually leaving. And it sounds like there are a lot of things that you can do as a loved one of someone in the situation to essentially help prepare them when they do finally get to the point that they feel comfortable with leaving. Yeah. Okay, ladies, like I said, this is a heavy topic, so please go do something to care for yourself. Go walk it off, shake your hands out, like do something. Eat a sweet treat. I don't know. Do something that'll help you. Anything, truly. But nonetheless, essential topic to cover that I have not yet had on this show. So I truly do appreciate you sharing your experiences and helping those who need it at this moment through your lived experiences. So thank you for your courage. Thank you for your support. And if you happen to know someone that could use this episode, use the insight that Brooke shared. And if they're open to it, share this episode with them. And if you love the show, please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I would so appreciate it. That's what helps the show grow and helps more people like you get the support that they need. And thank you again, Brooke. Please connect with Brooke. Go check out her socials. All the links will be in the show notes. And that's all I got for you today. Please do something to care for yourself. I know I will. And I'll catch you back here on the next episode. Bye. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perta Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.